Greetings, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you here virtually today so I can have a chance to talk to you about the state of the system and how wonderfully things are going in our system and how grateful I am to each of you for your role in that. Before we get into that, I want to talk a couple of logistics. I'll be talking for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll leave plenty of time for some questions at the end. We've gotten a whole bunch in advance, and we're going to do our best to answer as many as we possibly can. You can also ask a question while you're watching, if you're watching live, and thank you to those of you who will watch this recorded later. You can text the word DeBakey to 37607. Now, some of you may be able to hear I'm fighting a little cold, so I apologize if I've got to clear my throat a couple times today. You know, if you leave today with one key message, I want you to hear how critically important you are, how grateful we are to each and every one of you for coming to work with passion and purpose, for being here to help our patients and our communities, and for doing such an amazing job as a wonderful team. And I'm going to talk quite a bit about those themes today. But before I dive into the content, I wanted to just reflect on Winter Storm Enzo, which we've just gotten through, because that was a perfect example of all these wonderful people coming together as a team. Here you see some pictures from across our system. We obviously couldn't show everywhere in one slide, but I was telling everybody, get the cameras out, because this is probably the only time we're going to see this for a while. I think it's been since 1993 that we've seen such a historic snowfall. And we have lots of great pictures of our teams, and I just want to say a huge thank you to our ride-out teams for being here and for the great attitudes. When I was here with you and I'm rounding, all I heard was such positivity about everything going on and how we are here to serve our communities. We are essential to what our communities need. And we had a little fun along the way getting out in the snow when people were able to, and I think that's fantastic as well. I know that this means you've got loved ones, pets, kids, parents, you know, your significant other, your spouse, etc., at home working extra hard while you're here. So I know that's a sacrifice for you, and you overcome a lot of adversity to be here. It's also a sacrifice for them, and so please thank them on our behalf for doing all of that at home. And many of you were on the recovery teams, and thank you for getting back to work as quickly as you possibly could. Thank you for your flexibility and your patience as we sort through a lot of uncertainty during these storms. And thank you for always putting the patients first. I want to talk about a couple stories and tie them back to what was a lot of fun this summer that we all had, which was watching both the Olympic and Paralympic Games that, of course, happened in Paris, France, and a little bit around the rest of France. It was a really beautiful time and very fun watching all of this. And I want to tell you a couple stories and tie them to who we are. This is the women's 4x400 relay team. The U.S. women's 4x400 relay team has won 8 straight gold medals, and this is an amazing picture caught as they're celebrating that. They're so dominant after winning 8 straight, they won by over 4 seconds and 30 yards between them and the next team. But the year before, at basically the World Championships, they actually were disqualified. They dropped the baton. And so they overcame that adversity. They focused, they drilled and drilled and drilled, focused on their fundamentals, and came back strong. And just a great example of resilience. This, on the next picture, is the men's 4x400 team. That men's 4x400 team, also remarkable. This is 3 straight gold medals for the men's 4x400 relay team. And what's really remarkable about that team is that they were missing their absolute best performer. Their best performer, a man named Quincy Hall, 2 days before had injured himself. He won the gold medal in the 400-meter relay. So in winning that gold medal, the fastest person on the planet around this event, we were without him, and yet we still won. And in fact, it took our anchor runner, Rai Benjamin, to lean in and win by 1/10 of a second to keep our record going. And what did Rai have to say? Rai had to say that, listen, we are a team. We connect off each other's energy. We feed off each other's energy. And did they sit and mope and say, gee, we lost our best runner. There's no way we can pull this off. There's no way we can win the gold. No way. They got together in a time of adversity and they made it happen, just like you do when we deal with a hurricane this past summer, or we deal with a winter storm, or in every day, all the things that each of you do to make sure our institution is successful. And so this is the Team USA results, both the men and women going back to 1972. You'll see the men have won 10 gold medals, the women have won 9 during that time, absolutely dominant. And does that remind you of something else that you see frequently? What if I show it to you like this? That color coding looks pretty familiar, doesn't it? Because that's how we look at our Vizient Quality and Accountability ranking when we're looking at our hospitals. And we and you are the men's and women's 4x400 dominant relay teams year in, year out. And you know who benefits? Our patients benefit from that every year. So when you see blue here, that means we're in the top 10%. When you see green, we're in the top 25%. Yellow means top half, red means bottom half. And if you see the 5 stars, that means we were in the absolute top group that Vizient has in each of the size categories of hospitals. And so Houston Methodist Hospital and the Texas Medical Center, our academic flagship, competing against the biggest names in healthcare across the United States, their best performance ever, number 4 out of 115 of the biggest names. Willowbrook is in the next category, and they were 2nd out of 177. And in the smallest category, Clear Lake was 14th out of 364, which is top 4%. They're by far the biggest category. And then in the 3rd biggest category, which encompasses most network hospitals across the country, we occupied the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 slots. The Woodlands won number 1 for the 4th year in a row. There's 204 hospitals, so this means we had the top 4 slots and the other 200 were behind us. This is unparalleled, and this is something tremendous that each of you are achieving together. And we do this and achieve this because we focus on the fundamentals. And when we focus on the fundamentals, the awards follow suit time and time again. I'm not going to go into all those wonderful awards, but we get them really across the board. And we achieve this because of a singular focus on our vision for the 2nd century. 6 simple words that say so much. Unparalleled. Unparalleled means we're not going to let anyone be better. We're going to be that relay team that says, I don't care what it takes, we're going to pull together. If we win by 1/10 of a second, we still are winning. And when we win, our patients and communities win. We put safety first, and quality and service and innovation. I'm going to talk a lot about the word "and" later in my talk. And I have the wonderful privileges as being able to help lead this organization of a person that many times people come to, or they see me in the community and they say, gosh, things seem to be going great. They write me letters, they give me phone calls, they send me emails, they come to me on LinkedIn, they call me, whatever that is, and they tell me stories about the care you provide. And what I tell them every time is it's an amazing team of people, and it's about culture and having the right culture in the institution. It's also about consistency and a sustained focus. So these are images for now almost a quarter of a century of how we communicate and work together, just like you watched that long time consistency across those 2 great men's and women's 4x400 relay teams. It's also being very consistent in how we focus and making sure we all think alike in terms of where we're going, and we bring all of our viewpoints into those discussions. And so 5 key areas we focus, and I'm going to structure much of the rest of my talk around some of these focus areas. The first of those is recognizing that we're not there. Unparalleled is a journey. To get to unparalleled, we'll never get there, because you know what? Tomorrow, unparalleled is going to mean something different than it is today. So let's go back to the men's 4x400 relay team. So we talked about the fact that they won all these gold medals. This is their 3rd in a row. Well, in between the Olympics, right, there's world championships. I mentioned the women's team had actually dropped the baton in the last world championship, and so was disqualified. The men's team actually won that. And I want you to just focus on one thing here, and that's the time that they had to win. 2 minutes, 57.31 seconds. This is the time it took to win 1 year later at the Olympics. So running with 4 very talented athletes, but missing their superstar, the fastest person in the 400 meter in the world, we managed to win by 1/10 of a second, by 1/10 of a second. But notice 254.43, that's almost 3 seconds better than the year before. The time we had the year before, we wouldn't have even been in third place. We would not have been on the podium. So the world continues to improve and get better, and so does what's expected out of us as we look forward. So think about the Vizient that I mentioned to you. This is another way of looking at that. Across the top here, now you see each of the hospitals, you see the ranking, that's what you saw in the right-hand column on the last one. You see we're all 5 stars. But if you delve into the individual elements here, remember, blue is top 10%, green top quarter, yellow top half, red bottom half. What you see is we're not nearly as consistent. I read this mostly left to right. So what you'll see is a lot of variability across our hospitals, but I also read this up and down and say even within our institutions there's variability. So there's always opportunity to improve what we do. Now I'm going to make a caveat here that the 5% for equity, the reason they do that is they're still struggling with the metrics, and basically you end up first or 80th or 150th or whatever because they're all in bands. And so we're still looking at that, not really seeing an issue there, but nonetheless it feeds in. So what I'm really talking mostly here is how inconsistent you can see around a couple of the other things like effectiveness and efficiency, for instance, and some opportunity even in patient-centeredness as you look around. And so when you think of, hey, if we're going to be really great, I got to look in the mirror and say what's not so great. Right? That's the women's team saying, we dropped the baton. We've got to focus on our handoffs, and that's going to be the biggest thing we focus on getting ready for the Olympics. We've got to be able to say, where aren't we as good as we'd like to be? And for me, broadly, the areas that we struggle in and that we've got a lot of work to do and where there's a lot of good work going on and a lot of progress being made is in access and in seamless coordination. Access means, can you come and see us? Can you see our physicians? Can you get scheduled for what you need, when you want, where you want, how you want? If you want to go to a doctor's office and you really want to be seen tomorrow, can we get you in? If you're happy to be seen in a couple weeks, okay, we'll get you in 2 weeks. Do you want to be seen virtually? Do you want to be seen in person? Do you have a location you want to be seen in? All of those kinds of things. Coordination of care is even harder. Because as medicine gets more complicated, as more and more moves into an ambulatory environment, if you think about the inpatient environment, our hospitals are almost like one big ICU, right? So they take multidisciplinary teams, many different medical consultants, clinical consultants, nurses, therapists, PCAs, you name it, right? They're there helping those people. And what we've got to do is make sure that's coordinated, and we need to make sure they understand it's coordinated. Nothing makes me shudder more than when, a patient complains and says, hey, it just didn't seem like people were talking to each other. This doctor came in to me at 8 o'clock, told me you're going to do one thing. Another doctor came in to me at 9 o'clock and asked me what the doctor at 8 o'clock said. We should be communicating, for example. We're actually making a lot of progress, putting lots of infrastructure and lots of team effort on improving these. Just wanted to show a little bit of an example in the access arena where we've come a long way and we have a long way to go, but think of online access, think of appointment availability, think of texting and ability to set up an appointment through a text and getting communication and all of the above. Because when we work together as one, when we act like a single system, when a patient comes in and says, I might be in the Research Institute building, I might be somewhere in the overall academic institute in one of our teaching programs, I might be at a network hospital, I might be at the academic hospital in the medical center, I might be in one of our hundreds of physician office locations, and gee, I walk in and I know it's Houston Methodist. They know there's one standard, one way of caring, one team that's pulling together to do all the right things for them. And to do that, the bigger and bigger we get really takes very purposeful and intentional effort at how we structure things, how we organize things, how we work together as a team. And that is a performance excellence system. Chris Siebenaler and his team have been rolling that out across particularly the hospitals to start, but further throughout the institution. I don't have time to go into all the nuts and bolts details, but it is truly structuring and focusing on the fundamentals. But I want to call out one bullet point on the right there, and that's engaging and empowering our people. The best organizations have teams that work together for the patients. They listen to every voice. When somebody brings up a problem, they address a problem. And so that's every single one of the 33,000 plus people both have that responsibility to do that, but we have the obligation as an organization to make sure that you're heard, that you have a voice, that you have a say-so in how we do things, that when you identify problems, they're quickly addressed, because you are our best army of people to make sure that we can do that. And speaking of that army of people, I consider us a family. I guarantee you, Ry Benjamin, when you hear that quote, considers his teammates members of the family. And I've talked for several years now about how critically important it is to continuously strengthen our family. This is a slide I put together a couple years ago as we were kind of struggling and getting through some of the aftermath of the hardest parts of the COVID pandemic. And all of these things are important to people. All of these things are important at differing degrees to different people. I think the most important job of leaders and the most important role of team members is to show up with purpose and passion. And you know what? Let's have a little bit of fun where appropriate. The snowball fights and the snowmen and everything else we saw happening when people were in between their shifts or able to take a lunch break or whatever during the winter storm. Having a voice, being heard, feeling part of a team, being proud of the institution. This is what people want from work. This is what we're committed to. We're committed to your growth and development. We want you to come here, love working here, and decide this is your place for life. I've been here for going on 28 years for now. I made that decision a long time ago, and I absolutely love this organization. We want each of you to feel that very same way. And so we spend a lot of time doing many things, one of which is thinking, how do we make sure everybody hears how grateful we are, what an impact they're making, how they are able to connect with the people in the community, and how our communities are better because of the amazing work that each of the people who work here is accomplishing. And last year was a very fun year for that. We were able to celebrate you in many, many different ways. In early August, we actually surprised everybody with a $750 grossed up, meaning you got $750, we paid the taxes, bonus. And this fall, we did a bunch of celebrating you activities over a course of a few days. Everybody got an extra day of paid time off. Between work and the summer work this fall, you were able to get $350 of Houston Methodist money put into an emergency fund that we would strongly encourage you to create and use as a tool for getting through the unexpected things in life. So many of you wrote me nice notes about the $100 DoorDash credit that we did, and boy did I get a lot of great notes about the $10,000 giveaway that we were able to do, 1 in 100 of our employees winning that, and of course our annual thank you bonus that we did in December as well. And so thank you for everything you do. And I have something fun to announce, which is this year we are doing a family fun day. Can't tell you who the act is yet. We don't quite have the contract signed, but we're working on a big band that's done lots of great things and had a number of hit albums and a lot of hit songs. And I think it's going to be a blast. Always love seeing everybody there. So save Saturday, May 10th, 2025, and you'll be hearing more as we can share more about the content of that day. And we listen to you. We do an employee engagement survey every single year. This shows you that for a couple decades now, we have very consistent results, 95th, 96th, 97th, 98th percentile each and every year. The reason we sustain that, we believe, is because we've got this great culture that I've talked about, but we listen, we use this, we drill this down by work unit and then say, where are we hearing things aren't going so well? How do we help that improve? Where are we seeing themes? Many of those things you saw on the Celebrating You slide were ideas that came out of this and some other surveys. And one of the very important things as we all work together to build a culture, it's a little bit like that women's team saying, okay, together we're going to work on our handoffs. We're going to work on our handoffs. We pick a topic around being unparalleled, and we do a wonderful series. We get almost 90% of our employees there every year. It is an expectation that you will attend. I will tell you, I've never left one of those without just feeling exhilarated and proud and ready to go for the next stage. We kind of got through the series we'd been doing because we did a couple baseline years and overall years, and then did safety, quality, service, innovation, as well as some fundamentals below that. And we talked about, do we end this? Do we keep it going? Do we tweak it? And really it's working so well. You'll see continued process improvement and even better videos and everything else, but you'll see that we are continuing to embark on this. So when this happens in the fall, please be there. It is critically important. So we are working on those handoffs. So we are a team that pulls together. I'm going to talk very briefly about don't let the lines cross. This is a philosophy of mine that says at a leadership level, whether you're talking a leadership level, for an individual unit or whether you roll it all the way up to an organization, at the end of the day, you have sort of a revenue line or a budget in some cases. You have an expense line, and that's your costs that are there. They go up, right? We've all experienced a lot of inflation, thankfully much better this year, but we've experienced a lot of inflation over the last few years. So when expenses are going up, if your revenue doesn't go up at least as fast, eventually the lines will cross. And if it's a slight difference, that may be years away. If it's a big difference, it may be tomorrow. And the job of leadership is to say, hey, we're seeing them converge a little bit, just a wee bit. Let's make some changes. Let's look at why that's happening. Let's address that. And it's that philosophy. And as many of you know, one of our neighboring institutions underwent very significant layoffs this year, sadly, for all those affected people. In my book, because over the years, they were not focusing on not letting the lines cross, and adjustments can be made. Thankfully, they are back on track. They're in a great position today. And then finally, I want to talk quite a bit about the word and focusing on the and. You see, this is an overall philosophy that I think serves us very, very well. And I'm going to talk about a couple aspects of that. When we think about our patients and how we serve our patients and what our patients want and why our patients come to us, they're not saying to us, hey, I want this part to be really good, but it's okay if that part's not very good. They want it all, and they deserve it all. That's what they deserve. So when you think about something like the Vizient scorecard, these are not counter purposes. These are not an or. They are an and. And much of the strategies we do, and I'll wrap up with that a little bit later, are very much part of that and. They're growing, being there for people, meeting them where they want to be. Think about access, right? What did I talk about? People want to be seen when they want to be seen, where they want to be seen, how they want to be seen. That's not an or, that's an and. They want all of that. They deserve all of that as our patients. And so lots of exciting things in this realm going on to continue growing our system and reach more people. One of those is in the Texas Medical Center. On the left, you see a picture of both the Walter Tower and what eventually the Centennial Tower will look like. This is taking our original 1951 and 1963 buildings and replacing them with a state-of-the-art part of that. Started, of course, with Walter Tower, now mostly completed as we open up Centennial Tower. We're still about 3 years away, not quite, and what you see now is it's not quite ready to top out, but it will top out by mid-year. We've been putting on a lot of the outside of that, a lot of great people working. So when you think about 33,000 of us as employees, just think of the thousands of people working on all the projects that are outside to help us grow to serve our community. One really exciting and in growing and serving new communities is Houston Methodist Cypress Hospital. This is out on 290. This is an actual picture. I used to have renderings that look just like this. This is a photograph now. This will open up on March 17th. So we're talking about 6-7 weeks away. We will open up to lead medicine in that area of town. We've already got a lot of things going on within the two physician buildings. You can see one of those buildings off to the right of the photo. We continue to grow substantially, and we continue to focus on providing clinical care to our patients. If you take a snapshot of our institution at any given second from a patient perspective, far more are being seen somewhere by a physician in one of our clinics or one of our affiliated or medical staff member physicians in private practice than are being seen in our hospitals. And in fact, what you see here, we've updated this each year. We're up to almost 1,800, mostly physicians, but also physician extenders, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, and others. Look at that, almost 4 million phone calls, almost 400,000 referrals, over 2 million visits happening with those. And look to the right how much we continue to anticipate that growth. And we're also trying some different things and new things as the world shifts around us. Just a month ago, we opened up an ambulatory surgery center as a pilot center within the physician organization with 4 operating rooms. Right now it has ENT cases happening in it. We're ramping up slowly as we get our Medicare numbers and contracting and other things, but it will also have orthopedic, hand, and ophthalmology. If that's working, we sort that out, you can expect to see more of that around the community. And one of the things I'm very excited about are very big, large investments, not in hospitals, but in comprehensive care centers. These are very large sites that consolidate many physicians in a region. Think of sort of the spaces between our hospitals many times, where we can also put many other services like imaging, like infusion, like therapy, whatever those things may be, to locate in those comprehensive care centers. So stay tuned, you'll be seeing a lot of information as this evolves. And the other place where we think about an and where we are clearly leading medicine is embracing and using technology as a tool for our institution. But the statement at the top is really, really key, because technology is a tool, but we have to figure out how we use it, we have to guide it, and we have to leverage it. What I always tell our technology teams and our innovation teams, there are 2 overarching guiding principles. Number 1, patients come first. So that obsessive focus on what do our patients need and how do we make their journey more smooth? How do we eliminate a lot of the friction? How do we bring things together when you're talking about things like coordination of care? But a very, very, very close second place to that is make the lives of the people who are serving our patients and who are working here even better. A great example of that would be something like ambient listening, where perhaps the charting happens because the computer AI is listening to you and it gives you a draft that you can then use rather than you sitting to chart that. Great examples are things like virtual nursing, which has been embraced by our nursing team and which has been so very effective and which our patients have loved. And so stay tuned, we will continue to focus on technology as a tool. And then I want to talk a little bit about our research endeavors and our academic endeavors, right? So research is obviously doing different kinds of research, whether it's research at a bench in a laboratory where you think about test tubes and all this sophisticated equipment and all these things. Research can also be translational research, which is our biggest focus, where you're really trying to get something that was discovered to a patient. And then research is clinical, where you're actually getting it to the patient and you're now seeing first, is it safe? And then if it's safe, is it effective? And then if it's effective, how do you then scale that to a population? We just had a sort of passing of the baton, a really smooth passing of the baton. Dr. Dirk Sossman retired after many years with Houston Methodist. He's been amazing at everything he did, and we found a wonderful internal individual who was running our cancer center, and that's Dr. Jenny Chang, who will and is already now leading our academic institute. And this is an area that is thriving. It is core to who we are, and to an even greater extent will become much more of a network function than it has been in the past. And what I mean by that, will be out across the system, obviously with the core happening in the academic flagship, but a lot happening elsewhere. We get grants from external agencies to support what we do, the NIH, the Department of Defense, private industry, philanthropies and other things like that. What you see here is we've most clearly hit an inflection point. We've been building and building and building infrastructure, and now that is accelerating and accelerating very, very quickly. And lots of cool things happening as a result of that, including really thinking about when and where and how is our next research building going forward. And then I want to talk a little bit about another use of the word and. This is a photo of opening and the closing. This is, I think, the closing, but also we had beautiful opening ceremonies at the Olympics. They were both beautiful. What was so wonderful about the Olympics, what's always so wonderful about the Olympics, is it brings people from all walks of life, from around the world, people with incredibly different life experiences, and they share one common goal, one common dream, one common experience, and that's academic excellence. I find that personally truly inspiring. The Methodist Church has a philosophy that says every person is a person of sacred worth and value. And I think so many times about how each of you inspires me. We have over 33,000 people working at Houston Methodist. they come, like the countless athletes that were there, from every walk of life, every imaginable background, bringing their selves to work and helping our communities. Part of the diversity we value in that is diversity of thought and diversity of political opinion and political affiliation. So there are many people on our team, 33,000 plus people, who consider themselves Republicans. There's many who consider themselves Democrats. There's many who consider themselves independents. And there's a fair amount who are just like, would everybody stop bickering and just get on with it out there right now. And at a time like now, there's many, many emotions. Some people are jubilant at where things are going. Some people are depressed at where things are going, and there's everything in between. We have 33,000 different people, and I guarantee you that means we have 33,000 different viewpoints, 33,000 different points along the political spectrum, and we share a common culture. Isn't that a beautiful thing? And isn't that a beacon of hope and example for how our great nation should work? So ahead of time, one of the things I received a whole bunch of questions about were about some of the executive orders that were coming out just last week, as we had a change of president in the United States last week, particularly around two topics. One is diversity, equity, inclusion, and the other was about immigration. So I want to address both briefly because there's more we don't know than we do know at this point. For me, I'm going to start with immigration. Immigration is a prime example of something that deserves an and way of thinking. We have every right, as does every nation on the planet, to secure our borders and control our borders and decide who should come in and who shouldn't. And we're a nation built on immigrants, a nation for over 250 years that's been a beacon of hope for people from around the world who come here. And our country has always needed immigration, and it always will need immigration. I am the son of immigrants, parents who made a great sacrifice to come to the United States because they had a dream for a better life. And now my brother and I and our families here have, spanned out across a couple different states in the United States. If you think about the next quarter century, we will actually have, at best, about a 4% increase in the working population, 18 to 64. The below that shrinks. Above that actually goes up by 40-something%, and 85 plus goes up by 168%. Well, guess who we care for, right? Who needs healthcare? The older you get, we know, the more you're going to need healthcare. So it's also a strategic imperative that we treat this as an and, we secure our borders, and we figure out how we have appropriate immigration in our country. And I think our approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion has also focused on being an and. We haven't had quotas, we haven't had demographic targets. This has never been about favoring one individual over another, and it never will be. This is about helping every single one of our 33,000 plus employees thrive. It's about everyone feeling included, everyone being part of the family, everyone bringing their real, true selves to work so we can benefit, and most importantly, our patients can benefit from all of your life experiences, your differences of opinion, your thought differences, your views, your expertise, your language skills, everything else. We serve hundreds of thousands, actually well over 1 million people every year across our system. Just like you, they meet every single definition, and to care for them well, we need to understand them, we need to meet them where they are, we need to address their unique issues, and we need to understand what impacts them both in true health indicators and also in all the things around us that impact health. So as we're talking about that word and we're talking about how all of us need to think that way, and all of us need to always say, how do we figure out the right answer? How do we work together to figure out the right answer? How do we make the best decisions? We make the best decisions when people with differences of opinion actually figure it out and bring that to the table, and then we make a consensus-driven decision, or sometimes have to make a compromise decision, or sometimes a leader has to say, I've taken all viewpoints and this is the way we're going to go. But that's when the best thinking happens. So go back to what I was saying about the business system, and we need to hear from all 33,000, and everybody has a voice. That's when we thrive. And many of the things we do institutionally, sometimes on surface you may say, gee, it seems like they're a little bit in conflict, but they're not. They're an and. So we need to grow our hospital-based business. And at the same time, we need to recognize that a lot of care shifts outside of the hospital. Invest in these mega comprehensive care centers, invest in surgery centers. We need to build RPO. There's a demand for that. Our patients want it. It integrates well with the system. It's on Epic. And we always have had, we always will have a pluralistic model. What I mean by that is we welcome any qualified physician who agrees to live by our values in our institution. And our physician medical staffs actually put the structure around that, and we embrace them and welcome them and want them working at Houston Methodist. We have to be good financial stewards. Don't let the lines cross. And invest in many key things like research and education, which are very expensive. And if you were purely finance driven, you might say, no, I'm not doing that. But this is an and, because it's how we benefit our communities. We need to commit to innovating in the future, but you also have to focus on the operational excellence. Think about those relay teams. I promise you, the operational excellence is let's get the baton right, let's get the start right, etc. But there's also innovations in how might we do things different. I mean, just think of the running shoes they wear. That's a bunch of innovation they're using as a tool, for example. We need to engage you, our team members, our workforce, and at the same time we need to be thinking about who's the workforce in the future? How are we going to have enough people? How do we train enough people? How do people have a great career path moving forward? And as we do that, that's the vision for the second century. That's 6 simple words: unparalleled safety, quality, service, and you see that's capitalized for a reason, innovation. So thank you for your time and attention today. It has been a delight speaking with you, and now I'm going to try my best to take some questions. You'll see me looking up sometimes because the screen is kind of above my head where they filter in some questions that I will be able to take a look at. Well, I'm going to tackle a couple that I always get. Whenever I talk, whenever I'm out there speaking to people, the first question I always get is, when are we coming to X? Very, very common areas I'll hear is Kingwood and out 59 to the northeast. Another is straight down south, Pearland and Manville and all of that area there. And someday we may get to both of those. Let me tell you how our process works. I'm going to talk about a hospital perspective first, and then I'm going to broaden that out because, of course, physician sites continue, those comprehensive care centers, et cetera, are critically important as well. We have a very organized approach. So when we said, okay, we're ready, to build another hospital, and think about the huge investment that is. So you can't just tomorrow say, let's build a hospital, and then the next day build another, and the next day to build another, right? Think about your own personal life. You probably don't buy, 2 cars right at the same time. You probably save for one, buy one, and if your spouse needs one, maybe you're timing those out as a simple type of example. If you think about that, we built a new hospital in 2010. We built a new hospital in 2017. Now we've got a new hospital opening up in 2025. Along the way, we had Clear Lake and continuing care come into the system as well. So probably be a little while before we do have an additional hospital. As we were thinking about the hospital, we thought about a number of issues with where that would be. We analyzed each market, and we ultimately decided that Cypress was the place to go. Before that, we'd actually decided the Woodlands was the place to go. Do I think those 2 markets you've mentioned may get there someday? Yes, but right now I don't think they would demand a leading medicine, large, sophisticated hospital like Houston Methodist and all of our network hospitals at this point in time. And we are focusing on continuing care centers or comprehensive care centers. We are focusing on physician organization. We're focusing on potentially ambulatory surgery centers. And so when we look at those, we do similar analyses, but we also say, how do we meet people where they are in between our hospitals? How do we take groups of physicians that may be in multiple offices and bring them together and have primary care and specialty care together in the same space? And so you'll see continuing much degree of development as well. I got a couple specific questions along the way, one particular campus with Houston Methodist Clear Lake. Let me say this, I'll talk specifically about that, but I want to give you a little broader answer. And the question was really, are we growing? Are we going to grow? Do we have plans there? I'll take Clear Lake first, and then I'll move that out to the broader group as we discuss that. We have a master facility plan for Clear Lake. If you're familiar with that campus, when we first bought it, because that's really the only acute care hospital we're operating at this point that we haven't basically built from scratch, other than Baytown, which we've now been replacing significantly. And we took a look at the campus and said, okay, we got to improve visibility. We need to improve access. We acquired a lot of land right around it, so we could do that. You can see there's a drive into it now. We built a physician building that looks very much like our consistent model. There is a plan to replace the inpatient facility there as well. Now, the people who are running Baytown, had a plan to say, hey, we need to start replacing Baytown. In fact, we did one beautiful tower there, Unity Tower, and that has been a smashing success, obviously with our teams who work there as well as with the people in the community of Baytown. And so we we have that demand. And then the Woodland needs to grow, and Baytown needs, and Sugar Lane needs to grow, and we're building Centennial Tower, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of what we do is say, how do you time these? How do they make sense the best? How do we lean in, be aggressive, be there for our patients, but of course do so responsibly? And so you'll see many, many exciting things continuing to roll out. Of course, this year, opening a hospital is no small thing, and you're seeing a lot of work done on these comprehensive care centers. And of course, if you drive by Centennial Tower, it is quite something, or go up into Walter Tower and look down on that construction. It's truly an army, as it was out in Cyprus as well. I got a couple of questions about virtual care and how we roll that out. So, we have a good deal of virtual care with nursing happening. It's been very effective. It's not in every nook and cranny of the system, but it's been rolled out very substantially. And the context of the question was, how is that rolling out? When is that rolling out? Our philosophy is, when we identify things that work, things that make patients' lives better, things that make our staff's lives and ability to care for people better, we lean in and we put our foot on the gas and we get those done. And so you'll see us continuing to move forward. What virtual care does is it raises the question of, what else can we do virtually? And what we've seen is the nurses who are participating in the virtual love doing it. The nurses who are part of a team with virtual nurses love the fact they're there. Our patients love it, et cetera. And so one of the things we're doing as we open up Cyprus is saying, okay, blank sheet, how do we then put a structure in place that really knits that together as a team and focuses that going forward? And I'm very excited to see where that goes. And obviously, if some things go, then we have to ask the question of, okay, it worked in a brand new startup. How do we make it work somewhere else as well? So that is how we look at it. The other thing you can think about is, where else might we do this, right? Think about when something like a winter storm happens. We moved back to thousands of people doing virtual visits with their patients. We still do a large number of virtual visits every day on a routine day. But does everything in the hospital always have to be in person, or might it make sense that they're virtual? Are there ways to knit some of those experiences across our system, et cetera, et cetera? And so we continue to look at that. I'm seeing the screen in front of me and a couple comments come through, some which I think I've covered as I was talking about some of the political state, but there's a few more political state of the nation and changes. But there's a couple questions that have come in. So in addition, one of the things we've seen over the last week as a result of some executive orders is basically pretty much all the outward-facing activities of the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, and others have been put on pause. We don't have full clarity into that. We believe that's a short-term issue. One of the things that's done is slow down NIH funding, and we don't fully understand that as well. Obviously, we will continue attuned to that, watching that, understanding that. and working on that. Another question I just got was that there's been some discussion about reviewing not-for-profit status of hospitals. We are a not-for-profit status. We serve our community and benefit our community. Let me start by saying why hospitals are not-for-profit. You know, when we look at what we're doing and who we're caring for, the first thing we think is not finance. The first thing we think is not how do we return some dollars to a shareholder that exists. And so there's a great benefit to the community, but with benefit comes great responsibility, which is we provide tremendous benefit to the community. Now, we're very unique in the state of Texas because there's already a law that basically says how much should hospitals give back. We exceed that dramatically. So give you an idea, direct charity care that we do is about 7% of our revenue. So if we bring in $1 million, $70,000 was spent in direct charity care, right? So we're very, very proud of what we're able to do. And so you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of charity care provided directly to patients. We also provide a tremendous amount of other benefit, and the law in Texas also talks about that. And that benefit has to do with education, with research, with caring for underserved populations, with caring for Medicaid and Medicare underpayment, and many other things. When you total that all up, it's way over $1 billion. And so we're very confident that we and hospitals around the country that are not-for-profit are serving the community well as we do that. I've got a couple questions asking about expanding other places in the United States. Would we put hospitals and centers outside of Texas? We have no plans to do that. When I look at Houston, Houston is a lovely growing community. We benefit from over 100,000 people moving into our community every single year. We have substantial market share, but we could always serve more people. In fact, technically from a market share basis, which is not how we think, we're third in market. Our goal is not to be the biggest, our goal is to be the best. And so we think there are so many people who can benefit from our service that we will continue to grow in the greater Houston area. We do some work internationally because we do think two things. One is we can help other institutions improve care around the world. And the second is we do bring patients to Houston, particularly to Houston Methodist Hospital and the Medical Center, but also around the community sometimes as well for care they cannot receive in their countries. And we do, as a result, have two offices actually in the Middle East. We have a host of offices down through Central and South America that serve as referral centers and oftentimes serve as sort of a home base for some of the consulting that happens there as well. Keep the questions coming in, and I'm always happy to take them as well. I've been asked about Brazoria County, which I think I've already covered. And I got asked by somebody, please tell me who is going to be at our Family Fun Day, and I'm not able to do that, sorry, but we will do that at some point in the future. So it looks like the questions are starting to pitter a little bit. I have a couple more. Let me talk a little bit about PTO. A couple of questions I've gotten. A number of people have asked about what is PTO, how do we use PTO? People who didn't work last week, some had to use their PTO. PTO is a concept of paid time off as opposed to vacation. We've done that for a quarter of a century. 25 years now since we made that transition. I actually remember making the transition. When we made the transition, you had a bucket of vacation time, you had a small bucket then of some sick time. And what we did was say, listen, it's much more friendly to each individual who works here if they self-manage those buckets together rather than kind of trying to manage both of them. A lot of people who never got sick said, I'm never going to call in sick if I'm not sick. That would not be ethical. That would not fit our eye care values and integrity. And then some people felt like, hey, I really want to use that. And so we had, you would have some erraticism, basically some unpredictability. And so we said, listen, it's better if it's all put together. So it was put together, people self-manage it, therefore it's a much bigger number, and it gives everybody an ability to self-manage. So that's for anything in life that's unpredictable. It's, hey, my child is sick and I'm gonna have to stay home and care for my child. I'm sick and I've got to stay home for my child. And things that are predictable. I wanna take a vacation time and I wanna plan for vacation time. And so it's always been that policy. It's always worked that way, and we've continued to work it that way this week. So last week was no different when we did that. Got asked about inflation, and clearly we've been through a significant inflationary time in the United States. Clearly that's been a big factor on everybody's minds. We see articles about the cost of eggs or the cost of milk or the other things like that. Thankfully, with lots of work and lots of fiscal policy, and frankly, I think just some of the normal dynamics that happened after you saw this inflationary rush after some of the weird dynamics of COVID, those have come back down. But the problem and challenge, of course, with inflation is it doesn't surge up and then come back down. It surges up, stays there, and then it goes back to kind of normal rates of inflation as a result of that. We've done our best to keep up with market. You'll have seen lots of adjustments, obviously see many of the spot bonuses and other things we do. We look at every single job class every year, and we look at the market and we work to stay as competitive as we can with the market. As I showed you on that slide of what people want from work, I put at the bottom right, comp and benefits. It's critically important. We all deserve to be well paid, to be paid fairly, to have good benefits. But that's not everything there is to a job. You can get paid 25 cents more an hour and be miserable in a job because it's not a great place to work, or you can be paid 25 cents less or the same sometimes and be much happier. So we try to look at things holistically. We try to stay competitive, and we will always try to stay competitive with that. I'm seeing another question come in. Let me read it here for a second, about improving kind of how things work with managed care. Basically, what about improving benefit verification? How do you communicate more transparently with patients? Those are great questions, because those are a major topic of discussion around the country nationally. There's no question that what we face from the health plans out there is very daunting, and that many, many times makes life very challenging, most importantly for our patients, but then also makes things very challenging for all of us who work at Houston Methodist. We are there for our patients. I often like to say we are at the side of our patients, right? We are there with them through their health journeys. We are there through them through life's challenges. We're there with them at their side through life's joys, like having a baby. We are also on their side. So we are there fighting for them to make sure they get what they should have, to get the appropriate care, to work oftentimes with and sometimes against the insurance companies as we deal with some of those issues. And then I'm going to wrap up with one final question, because I think it's a great wrap-up question that just came here. And it's a question about the future and a question about confidence. I'll read it for you exactly. It says, do you feel confident in the future of Houston Methodist? Do you feel confident about the job security of the people who work here and the frontline staff? And that is such a great question, because that is a huge, emphatic yes. If you think back, the thing I wanted you to walk away with today is our deep, deep, deep appreciation for everything that each of you do for our institution. I hope you've also seen how working together as a team, everybody is achieving really, really great things, and our patients and our communities are benefiting. We've been tackling some of the toughest challenges people face, but most importantly, look at the clinical results we achieve. Look at the care people receive. And oh, by the way, while we do that, we have been able to be financially stable, financially successful, and will continue to be through all the philosophies we have around what I talked about, and don't letting the lines cross, and many other things. And I'm very confident in a growing community like Houston, the ability to continue to serve this great community, and the work each of you do, that we are on a wonderful path. So thank you for attending today. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everything you do.